All right, good afternoon and welcome to Truth and Transparency. Thursday, just after the noon hour. Welcome if you are on live chat from Truth and Transparency YouTube page. There is new information surrounding May 15th, 2020's 911 call that found a man lying unresponsive in the middle of the street. This man would later be identified as Tyric, Pugh. Sheldon Jeter Jr. would be arrested just 24 hours, if not less than 24 hours later, in connection with this homicide. Then a year later, June 23rd, 2021, Sheldon Jeter Jr. would be found guilty of first-degree murder for the homicide death of Tyric Pugh. A breaking story emerges right here on Truth and Transparency as new questions are raised based on the Beaver County 911 closed incident report. Location saved by locate call was 1140 Harmony Road, Baden, PA. This location is across the Ambridge-Aliquippa Bridge and not near the crime scene that late evening. The 911 caller said that he had worked a double shift at the Pittsburgh airport that day and that his shift ended at 11 p.m. He said by the time he left the airport, got in his van, and headed out, it would be about 11:15. This, however, though, was never confirmed by surveillance cameras, any coworkers, or timestamp from work. The 911 caller claims that he discovered the body and then very quickly, within 30 seconds of discovering the body, called 911. The 911 caller's van is allegedly seen on a camera at 11:37 in some seconds. Two cousins mark it. However, there are now discrepancies in the make and model of the van seen on the camera and the van that is in fact at the crime scene. The discrepancy comes at the crime scene and reports that a Town and Country Chrysler was actually moved by Officer Alex Bix out of the way, but on surveillance cameras from two cousins, it was a Dodge minivan. Again, the 911 call was made at 11:39 and some odd seconds, and that at 11:41 p.m. and 2 seconds, that the locate call trace provided a location that was that of Harmony Road in Baden. Again, not Keel Street, where the crime scene was, where the 911 caller claimed he was when he made this 911 call. Again, 911 caller claims that he owns a house up in Plan 6 on Jones Street, and that because he works for the airlines, stated that he only stays at the residence while he is working, and his actual address is that in New York. The 911 caller stated he was working the second shift at the airport that night and is normally done around 11. However, he probably didn't leave work until about 11:15. The 911 caller said that he traveled north on State Route 51 and then gets off there at the exit for Aliquippa. The 911 caller then makes the left turn onto Keel Street, which is where the two cousins' camera picked this van up allegedly. And he traveled up the hill to his residence. Upon traveling up the hill, he rounded the bend on Keel Street, observed a body laying in the road face up, stated he later checked his phone and observed that he called the police at 11:39. The 911 caller did not see any other vehicles or people on Keel Street while driving up to the bend and stated there was no one at the scene when he arrived. The 911 caller stated that he observed the body laying in the road. he stopped his vehicle and got out to check on the person in the middle of the road. The 911 caller related that he had a flashlight in his pocket and utilized it. He was able to see blood coming out from the victim's ear. The 911 caller said that he did tap the victim on the leg and that he didn't move. There was no response. The 911 caller stated that within 30 seconds of getting out of the car, he was on the phone with 911. He stated that he stopped his vehicle on the bend and just up the hill enough that if someone came down the hill, they wouldn't hit the victim. The 911 caller stated after police got on scene, one of the officers asked if they could move his vehicle, and he said sure. The officer said that upon arriving at the scene, this officer stated that he saw and observed a silver Chrysler Town & Country bearing temporary tags parked just past the victim's body and in the crime scene. The 911 caller related that that is the vehicle he was operating that night. The 911 caller stated that a vehicle did come down Keel Street approximately 30 seconds after he hung up the phone with 911. Stated that a male who got out of the vehicle stated he had already was aware that the body was there, and he had driven past it to go get his friends and come back. The 911 caller described the male as a white male with a red beard. The 911 caller stated he stopped the males from going down to the body, and no one other than the 911 caller touched the body. He stated that he had lived in the area for approximately 5 years. He also said that he does see people walking up and down the hill occasionally, but no one consistently. He also said that he did not recognize the victim, and that was all that he had to really say about it. From good notes here in the trial, one of the troopers said that they observed a burgundy Kia Sorento and a silver Chrysler Town & Country minivan bearing Pennsylvania temporary tags within the yellow crime scene tape. However, footage then from the two cousins' surveillance would state that at 11:37 and 37 seconds, 11:37 and 37 seconds, that a Dodge minivan turns onto Cochran Street, which becomes Keel. This vehicle is later determined to be the 911 caller's vehicle. Well, a Dodge minivan is not a Chrysler Town & Country. I brought that up before. I also brought up the time frame at 11:37 and 37 seconds. How long does it take for you to drive from that point of being on camera to then get to the body, allegedly that there even is a body right there at that time, to get out? Then you take 30 seconds, and then you're then calling the police. The 911 caller stated that he had called the police at 11:39, that's what his phone indicated. He would be correct in that statement, as that call did come in at 11:39 and a couple seconds. However, the 911 caller talked long enough that there was a trace put on the call. And the 911 caller's trace, the location, traced back to Harmony Road, Baden, not Keel Street. And coordinates were supplied with this trace. And his defense team, Sheldon Jeter Jr.'s defense team, again, the trace kicked in at 11:41 and 2 seconds. The location was saved by the locate call with coordinates, and then it was at 1140 Harmony Road, Baden. Male down on the ground, appears to have been struck by a vehicle. Unresponsive, severe bleeding, bleeding from the ears, in the sharp bend on Keel Street. That is what the 911 caller states. Does not state that there was 5 or 6 gunshot wounds directly in the head. If you were standing over the body and you had a flashlight and you shined a flashlight on this body, you would see not 1, not 2, but 6 shots to the head. One of which was right between the eyes. Again, all of this coming out at trial. Again, the 911 caller stating, male down on the ground, appears to have been struck by a vehicle. Unresponsive, severe bleeding, bleeding from the ears, in the sharp bend on Keel Street. Again, I brought this up a year ago, before trial, during trial. I questioned the validity of everything surrounding this 911 call. Again, in trial, in court, the other witnesses, so Brandon Wexler's there. He's coming from Rochester to hang out with his friend Preston. He goes up the hill. He claims that he passes the body. He's claiming that he could tell, because he says, I got out of there because I didn't know if the shooter was still in the area. Police say, well, how did you know he was shot if you didn't get out of the vehicle and look? Well, I just assumed because it's a bad area. Really, because that's exactly what Sheldon said when they said, why are you here when all these cops are here? And he said, we never said that Pugh was shot. Well, I just assumed, why else would you be here? And because of what his mom had told him when she had called him, and everything matched up perfectly. So you're not going to believe Sheldon, but you're going to believe Brandon Wexler just saying, oh, I just, again. Moving on. Yes. Lana, do you know where the shop and save is on Dust Ave? Yes. Harmony Road is about, yep. Oh yeah, I'm going to get into the pinpointing it on how far this actually is. Again, this is another main, very big point here, is that the people that Brandon was going up the hill to go visit, and he passes the body, and he brought his friends back, the father and the son. Their statements were that the next thing I know, my buddy's coming up, almost flying up the hill here, runs out of the car, and informing that someone was shot on Keel Street. Again, that they needed to call 911. Nobody called 911. He left the body. No one called 911. Again, in that area with the police, I know I wouldn't want to be calling 911 either, just because then you're going to be getting blamed for the homicide. But gets his friends, they go back down there, but they said that they estimated that Brandon Wexler pulled up about 10 minutes after hearing the gunshots. 10 minutes. Not a minute, not to like it would be if Sheldon was the perpetrator, because Sheldon is seen on the two cousins camera at 11:35 and 52 seconds. Okay, Brandon Wexler arrives at his friend's house up there at 11:37. So 10 minutes, that means they heard the gunshots 10 minutes before, which would be at 11:27. Nobody was down there on Keel Street. Sheldon was not on Keel Street in that bend at 11:27. And they're saying that 10 minutes had gone by, and then Brandon Wexler shows up at this house. Now, again, very conveniently, the 319 Shaw camera and Keel Street camera was off allegedly 43 minutes by the owner, but then he fixed it the day that the officers wanted to come and get the copy of the footage, and it was only 28 minutes off again. And they're going based off of junk science now. If you're bringing into question that you're pointing out and picking out these vehicles when people are just like saying, that's my vehicle. Again, I want to make it perfectly clear that this is a developing story, and that all of the questions now surround that the trace on the 911 caller traces back to 1140 Harmony Road in Baden at 11:41 and 2 seconds. That is when Joe, the 911 caller, is saying that he is standing over the body, calling 911. But the call trace, because he was on the phone for X amount of minutes, X amount of time to kick in the trace, and it traced back to Harmony Road, Baden, which is a good 10 minutes away from that crime scene. None of this was brought up in court. Jeter's defense team has no idea about this, never mentioned it, even though if they would have just, read documents, they would have it. By all accounts, with Sheldon being on the two cousins' camera at 11:35 and 52 seconds there, they were saying that just a minute or two before that, because it only takes like 20 or 30 seconds to get to that spot on Keel, so you got to back him up 30 seconds, so you go from 11:35 and 52 seconds to 11:35 and like 20 seconds, and that's when, somehow all of a sudden he just pulls over to the side, gets Pugh out, okay, for no reason, no motive, no nothing, just murders him right there. The crime scene does not indicate, is not indicative of everything where the shell casings were, where the body is. No questions were asked about that. But they are basically saying that this homicide would have happened right around 11:34, 11:33, 11:34. Well, Brandon Wexler coming up the hill and being at his friend's house at 11:37, and you have your witnesses at good 10 minutes went by, and then he's there. That clashes with everything, unless the 911 call was called before. And I always questioned the 911 call. I always questioned if somebody knew somebody had just pulled away from that area and then went ahead and called it in. Because all accounts, all witnesses saying that it was closer to midnight. They were down there at midnight. Again, surveillance cameras supposedly being off times, them moving them around. But it is questions now emerging surrounding the 911 caller's location at the time of the 911 call, which is in Baden, not in Aliquippa, Harmony Road, Baden, Pennsylvania. Again, I will answer any questions that I can for any people that are in live chat. Questions have always been surrounding the two cousins' surveillance cameras and when they were obtained. There is no reports of the two cousins' cameras being obtained at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, on that 5/16, like the officers put in their reports that they had already watched surveillance from two cousins' camera, and that's how when they saw Sheldon's SUV, when they approached the house to give a death notice at 3 o'clock in the morning, they're like, oh, that's the SUV that was on the surveillance cameras. There is no reports of any officers talking with anybody from two cousins to obtain entry into two cousins. There's nobody being dispatched to go into two cousins. There is no paper trail, chain, custody, nothing of this two cousins footage being obtained and being looked at prior to going to Sheldon's house. And the reason that they went to Sheldon's house is because of the ID that Pugh had on him. It had Sheldon's address. I've always said that was needed, otherwise they would have no reason to go to Sheldon's house. It was because of Pugh's identification card. He did not live at 127 Orchard Street. That had been on his driver's license since 2014. He had not changed it since then. However, after further investigating, Tyric Pugh was arrested just months after the Rachel Altondo homicide for drunken disorderly in Center. And just months after the Rachel Altondo case, for them and the police departments to see this address pop up, which was a very well-known address because of the Rachel Altondo case, it then would alert red flags off that this gentleman, Tyric Pugh, shared an address with Sheldon Jeter Jr. And then fast forward to 2 years, and this same person was murdered, and his identification card is the reason that they were able to beeline it straight to Sheldon's house at 3 o'clock in the morning, because they were quote-unquote going to give a death notice. Question number 1, Lana. How long will it take you to finish law school? This is what I think is funny about that, is a lawyer, it didn't take a lawyer to investigate this and to do all of this. In fact, it took 3 or 4 attorneys to not do their job at all, and played a huge part in the reason that Sheldon Jeter Jr. is in prison right now. They should be completely embarrassed. They should be ashamed. And now it holds a lot of questions surrounding, and they will start emerging. Obviously, there's without a doubt ineffective counsel, but is it something more sinister? And as more will unfold, I'm sure more will come up. But right now, the question surrounds this 911 caller and his location, that it traced back to Baden, 1140 Harmony Road. Yes, Miss Murphy, it is crazy. It is crazy, and I don't know how you miss something like this. And it's sad. But, again, not accusing anybody of anything. This is just, a developing story, a breaking story, and this surrounds everything that I was talking about over a year ago, and raised numerous questions surrounding witness 1, 2, 3, and 4, the 911 call, the timeline. All of this was raised heavily by my investigation back in March, April, and May of 2021. And the likes of trolls kind of took over and tried to do everything possible to derail the information that I was uncovering. Did the defense take the jury on a field trip to drive the route that the 911 caller would have driven and the route Sheldon would have taken to see the time possible? Yeah, there was no field trips for the jury. The question that I have right now is how would, if and in fact the information is accurate and that the 911 caller is on Harmony Road, how would he know to even call something like this in? Number one. And number two, I think it speaks for itself when the 911 caller is thinking that he got hit by a car. If you're standing over a body like that and that's what you think. Also, who carries a flashlight in their pocket? I mean, I guess maybe people have it on their keychains. But that's just really, really awkward. Sheldon has a really good lawyer in Corey Woods, so I have faith in Corey Woods to help Sheldon along in this appeal process and to do everything possible to get him his evidentiary hearing. And then, I may not have faith in Judge Tesla, following the law, but I definitely think that Corey Woods is, he recognizes things and he's doing what he can with his written work, and he's ready to argue. Thank you there, Maple Beef Supports Lana. You are watching in real time how your money is being used in Fight for a Family. Exactly. Did the dispatchers have this Harmony Road Addy when they dispatched the ambulance? If so, why would they dispatch to Keel Street instead? No, when he gave the 911, he said the Bend and Keel Street. So that's the address that anything would happen at. The trace didn't happen, and this is a report that happens at the end. So, do I think it raises a ton of questions? Yeah, but they just weren't asked, and so it was buried. This was buried. I don't know how you don't look at a report like this and say, okay, and was it available for the defense to see? Absolutely, it was. Now the question surrounds when was this given to the defense? As far as like discovery dumps go, when were they given this? That would be a great question to ask. But it would be something like this, if you witness something and you're trying to get out, like the Las Vegas shooting, you're not going to stand there and just keep taking shots and put yourself out there, but you're definitely going to call 911, and as you're moving away from something, say, oh, this is where I was, but like I'm not there anymore, like I'm driving or I'm running or whatever. But But yeah, I think that a lot of questions need to be answered. And here we go with a question here. I want to know how he got from airport to there that quickly. You're saying if you left at 11:15 from the airport, how he got to Keel Street so quickly? Is that the question? I also would like to know if Lee Rothman was on the case or if he was already off the case when this dump discovery was given over to the defense. I think that from everything that I've been told, Lee Rothman is a magical in the courtroom, and that Lee Rothman was the right fit for this case. He's a courtroom, lawyer. He has a history of success in the courtroom. He also has just experience. And Santa Cola, that was his first jury trial, I think, maybe ever. And then McKinney was brought in on the case, I think 6 months or less than 6 months before it was, in with the trial. And that's just, I don't know how anybody can prepare for something like that and be up to speed and go over something and be like the lead. But I do know that Sheldon originally had Lee Rothman, and I have questions surrounding that as well. The whole 911 call was questionable from the beginning, so that is what would have prompted me to look into the situation more. Yes. And that's the route where I was headed. And and now it's out there. You have to ask yourself, is it something that they missed, or is it something that was, purposely buried? I think that's what kind of happens with lawyers, though. So when people say, do you want to be a lawyer? I don't know. I pay attention to details, because if I believe in my client being innocent, I have to find out, and you have to dig for stuff like that. It's not just going to be, oh, here you go, read a book, and you're going to know what happened. No. It's going to take you places, and you need to go find stuff. And when you're looking at something and you see that all this surveillance is, quote unquote, oh, well, we speculate that it was just a malfunction in hardware. Well, no, you just take it in, and you're telling me that an expert can't look at it and see if the footage was deleted versus a malfunction. Just literally, it just starts to malfunction after 2 minutes of Sheldon being up in Plan 6. It was recording all the way up until 10:30 and then just stopped. Or was it deleted? But at the end of the day, it's, do you want an attorney that believes in your innocence, and they're going to go advocate for you and go hunting and putting together and listening to you and talking to you? As a client, you're supposed to be a very big part of your defense. And but at the end of the day, this was available, and there's one question out there, which is, in black and white, it says that the 911 caller was in Baden on Harmony Road. Now what? Who's going to answer that question? How is that possible? How was the 911 caller there, but yet supposedly standing over the body, and then supposedly being talked to by police officers, and then supposedly police officers moving his van up, and then supposedly everyone standing around waiting to then be officially interviewed from 11:42. They are not officially interviewed, and their statements were not recorded and put on the record until after 1 o'clock in the morning. Why? Why? Again, as the story develops, you'll hear it here first. Thank you, live chatters. And until next time, truth and transparency. Fight for a family.